Good afternoon. I'm hoping what we have is a great session for you this afternoon in terms of, as I mentioned just a minute ago, it's kind of a combo session. On the front end to sort of set the stage, and I wanted to introduce you to the Netapp Academic Alliance program, some of the major trends around cloud computing that I think make us particularly pertinent or applicable. And then one of the key things that we want to show you is the actual lab environment that's a key component of our entry-level certification. We'll have a demo of those labs. You can see how you can bring them into the classroom, maybe do a sort of I guess, evaluation in terms of their technical depth, the caliber of the labs, and all those. The labs that we do for the certification run about 6 hours, so we're not going to obviously show you all of that, but we'll give you a taste of what that lab environment looks like. So thank you this afternoon. Now, I've had a chance, I've been to several sessions this morning. I know the themes around cloud computing are popping up everywhere, and certainly I think with James' session that kicked off this morning, they talked about, what was the subtitle, work, do what's worthwhile kind of thing. I know that most of the community colleges, or many community colleges, are kind of assessed on the applicability of their curriculum, how fast their students find jobs. And this is a slide, I think it's coming out of Microsoft Research, but it's just showing the role of cloud computing in job creation. I know there's a debate, is the cloud going to eliminate IT jobs and everyone's just going to ship stuff off? Is cloud going to be, you see companies like us, EMC, VMware, and all of the companies that are here, is the cloud the greatest opportunity, or is it something that's going to put us all out of business? My contention would be, and I think what most of the studies are, is that it's driving job creation in a variety of fronts, but what it's going to require is a new set of skills. And so some of the traditional skills that students or you all might be teaching in IT have probably shifted a bit. And part of what I want to try to make a case for that with you today, and then talk about how we can help you infuse some of those skills into your curriculum. So we're going to, the introductions today, we'll go through and talk about the changing landscape. I want to talk specifically about an entry-level certification that Netapp launched a couple years ago, and then we'll kick into the hands-on session. But I did want to let you know, and I wanted to introduce, we've dragged in a set of folks from Netapp University. I'm actually part of Netapp University, which is the training arm within Netapp. And so I'd like to introduce Patrick Hughes, who's a technical instructor. Patrick is joining us today. He'll actually be running some of the demos, helping you walk through it. Deborah Rousseau, over in the corner. Deborah has actually worked with my group there for a couple of years, and has actually written some of the lab exercises guides and the curriculum content, so she's very well versed. And Al Eshon, who's our senior lab manager. Al's team actually runs the self-paced labs in the technical environment. So we've got a veritable brain trust here with us today. So any tough questions, go to them. Any technical screw-ups, talk to them. And we've got a good team here to present. But before I drill down, I guess on what I'm hoping to cover, what I was hoping to get from you, who is already teaching classes around cloud computing? Is anyone teaching a dedicated course? All right, Tony, you've got, is that called cloud services, cloud computing? Or
corporate strategy and policy.
Corporate strategy and policy.
For IT.
So you're looking at cloud from the economics, the business, and a little bit of the technical aspect as well? Okay, okay. Where is Bill here? There was a gentleman that did this morning who did a session on cloud that's specific. Anybody else? Touching on cloud through your IT stuff? Okay.
I use virtual machines on mine for networking class.
Sure, sure. Okay. Well, I think that's kind of a basic aspect of it. Well, I guess, part of what I would want to convey, or humbly convey to you, is that, while there was a little bit of that debate around the jobs, from our perspective, from Netapp's perspective as a storage vendor, as I said, there's really been a debate, is cloud infrastructure going to basically put us out of business, or is this the new next greatest opportunity for us? And so my contention is that cloud at this point, it's happening. It's real. I don't know if you've heard the analogy. Wayne Gretzky was a famous hockey player who would talk about why he was so good is he skated to where the puck's going to be, and rather than where it is. And I know as I talk to different professors that one of the challenges is I've got my existing curriculum. We only have a certain number of hours. We only have a certain number of credit hours or time with the students. How do I drop something or not? And I would argue that you need to start making maybe some of those decisions and looking at it. The ACM, the Committee for Computing, Education, and Community Colleges, I think they presented a little bit today, but tomorrow they're actually going through their recommended curriculum. I had a chance to be one of the industry teams that worked with ACM looking at the existing curriculum, and you'll see that there's an increased focus around storage and data management and cloud computing. And while they don't quite, I guess, dictate as to what the school should be teaching, ACM is certainly saying that at this point there's this emergence of this new architectural paradigm. Service-oriented architecture, cloud computing, and that these solutions are gradually going to become the dominant paradigm of organizational computing. So that was from the study that ACM did. Netapp, we just hosted an event in Las Vegas maybe 2 months ago in November, something called Insight. And we had the gentleman who runs Azure, the large cloud service provider for Microsoft up there. As you'll see, he said right now 8 to 12% of computing is on cloud. Most of it's still on premise. This is where the puck is today. But hybrid cloud will be the dominant enterprise model, where you have a private cloud and then you're outsourcing some kind of public cloud infrastructure. Microsoft is building 20 data centers this year. Now, this was last year. They're spending $1 billion a month. So the idea that data centers is going away is not going to be happening. All of this content has to reside somewhere. But, they're saying this is going to be the dominant enterprise model. The Department of Defense. Netapp is the largest provider of storage systems to the federal government, to the DoD, all of the service branches, and all of the, I guess, the spook agencies, NSA and some of these folks. This came out, what I was particularly impressed by is that, have you heard Cloud First? Are you familiar with the Cloud First? Is it the federal edict? Right now, all federal agencies are required to have at least 30% of their computing infrastructure to be cloud-based. If you're the CIO of the EPA, the FDA, or any of the different federal agencies, when you go to deploy a new set of IT services, it's supposed to be considered cloud first, and you have to maintain a 30%. The DoD, here what's unique about this is they're calling for a request for information for public cloud service providers. So the DoD, who's handling some of the most, I guess, precious information and probably stuff that you would want particularly secure, they're now looking at how can we outsource some of this. And for those of you, I see a few gray-haired guys around here like myself that were, I worked in the digital corporate research group before there was an internet. We funded the NSFNet and some of the early DARPA projects, and you couldn't do commercialization. It was once the DoD and the federal government started to put the money behind it that it became reality. So I think, you've got Microsoft, the DoD, ACM, Gartner. This is a study from a couple months ago. They've listed their strategic IT directions for 2015. And out of these 10, there's 5 or 6 of them that are very much cloud related. Really, number 4 is basically the essence of what we're going to cover today. The era of personal cloud, software-defined anything, the Internet of Everything. I know this is sort of one of the new marketing areas for Cisco, and they've been pretty predominant. I don't know if any of you have been reading the press releases in the last 2 days in Las Vegas. This week is the Consumer Electronics Show, the largest IT show or consumer electronics event each year. It is all around smart thermostats, smart garage doors, smart refrigerators. And if you start to think as all of these devices start to become connected, the data that they're generating becomes huge. Data and the management of that data now becomes a key issue. In terms of cloud adoption around the world, this is a study done by BSA, a global computing company, software company. What they were looking at here in terms of these statistics were the legal and regulatory environment in each of the countries, particularly around data privacy and security. And you'll see the United States is number 3 here. But again, if you look at, this is pretty much a picture of all the major developed economies. And so they're moving in it. I guess, what I'm trying to convey to you is that this is happening. You should be looking at how you start to weave some of this content into your classes. From Netapp, I'm thrilled that you're all here, but a lot of the events that I go to, Netapp is not all that well known. We're a $6-7 billion company, Fortune 500, 15,000 employees, but we sell in a little over 115, 120 countries around the world. So we've got a pretty good perspective in terms of what our customers are demanding of us. What are the challenges that they're facing? And so this idea of moving to a cloud-based model to be more responsive is definitely happening. They're mostly starting with that private cloud infrastructure behind the firewall, but providing services internally to their customers. And then they're going to be moving to public cloud where they start to have that hybrid cloud environment. They're looking for autonomy, agility, innovation, cost savings. The economics of it are driving it. And what we're going to convey to you today is some of the software that Netapp has developed, Data on Tap, our operating system. It's the #1 storage operating system installed worldwide. Some of our competitors have multiple approaches, and if you added them up, they have the dominant market share. But the Netapp Data on Tap software, so if your students were to get exposed to it and get familiar with Data on Tap, the likelihood of them running into it in an enterprise where they would go to work would be pretty likely. And this is, on one hand, I'm not here to be a salesman for cloud computing. But in terms of some of the feedback from our customers, we'll never buy another data center. We set up a virtual cloud in AWS, the Amazon Web Services. Netapp, we provide actually private storage through AWS for folks that don't want a shared service infrastructure for security or other reasons, want to provide their own dedicated. But our CEO wants us out of running data centers. And so many companies or enterprises, have that approach. But there are issues with cloud around security, around availability. For certain workloads, it's very applicable. So for areas like dev test, or running new applications, or building new applications, it's very applicable. So we're not saying that all the existing infrastructure is going to go away. But increasingly, cloud computing is going to be the norm. And your students would be well served to understand a lot of the concepts. Bill did a session this morning where he talked about sort of the basic underpinnings of what that is, both from the economics of the business. It's not all the technologies. The students have to understand how this environment is being used. And Tony, to your point, is students are looking at what are the trade-offs if I'm to build a computing environment. I'm guessing for most of your schools have probably outsourced mail to Gmail or something like that. Why am I in the business of running a mail application if I can outsource it? So companies are going to be looking at what are those applications, what are those things that I can move off-premise. That's underway. And so, that's, I guess, the initial part of making my case. Do you buy that? Does that seem to be what you're hearing from your advisory boards or what you're reading in the press? Yeah. Are you not buying it? You say, well, this is just a product, this is just another fad. I don't want to change my curriculum and then find out cloud goes away in 6 months. Mom? Okay. All right. So, what... I have a chance to work with schools in maybe a dozen different countries and around the world. And one of the things that we try to convey to them is as I mentioned, what my job I kind of view sometimes is a little bit of a bridge to convey the information from what our customers are demanding or doing to try to relay that to you around your curriculum and insights. And what we're seeing is the shift is cloud is some kind of whether it's platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, software as a service, it's a service-oriented approach. And so the idea is your mentality, you need to now be a service provider. you know, one of the things that I would argue, you touched on this, Bill, is negotiations. Your students should understand what's the service level agreement. How do you negotiate that, even internally? What are the chargeback processes that they might want to implement? So we see that if there's a changing set of approaches and technologies, and that's going to require a different set of skills from your students. There really are these multiple entry points, and you know, this is the traditional approach, and you know, there's going to be companies that want to run SAP. It's their absolute business critical application, and there's no way they're going to outsource that. That they want a dedicated application to run their CRM or their manufacturing operations or whatever it might be. But we're definitely seeing, you know, that virtualization. People are moving to that virtualized environment, and probably the first step in the cloud that they're taking is a private cloud. And so that's happening. I can't give you the exact statistics, but probably 80% of our customers are using some kind of a private cloud environment. And then as they go and look at that cloud strategy, moving to some kind of public cloud brings in this hybrid cloud. And this is sort of, I guess, this is the essence of what we hope to cover today, and I guess of my argument. You stop and think around as you have data that's going from your private cloud, customer data, employee data, market data, whatever it might be, you know, issues around governance, performance, security. How do you move it back and forth? If you move all your data to Amazon Web Services and they go out of business, how do you get it back? What protections do you have? How do you actually, what are the concerns that you have to have as you move this data back and forth? With hybrid clouds, I just mentioned, you know, offer consistent, these are issues that, you know, if you're looking at hybrid clouds where you have your own private cloud and you're now engaging with a public cloud as well, you have to look at how do you work across both of those clouds? How do you manage and control data among multiple, if you're using multiple environments? Control the data growth. You know, all the companies are dealing, and most organizations are dealing with huge volumes of data growth. You have to pay for your increased storage as you go on. How do you move it between? If you're using Amazon as for your disaster recovery, you're using Azure for your archives, you've got your own private cloud, how do you move and have that consistent data across? How do you leverage the on-premise? And if you need to. So again, there are some risks. I think there's a little bit of hesitancy before you see people jumping in with both feet and completely going with a cloud approach. But these issues are being addressed. You know, I was struck in a couple of the sessions that I was in today. They were talking about the curriculum that's being proposed for a number of schools, and you know, I was struck by there wasn't a whole lot around data management in there. Now, coming from Netapp or coming from the institute, you've got maybe a certain bias that that's kind of a critical area that you might need to look at. But these are just terms that over the last 10 days, as I've read different things around data, came up. Data portability, how do you move it? Data silos, data sovereignty. You know, one of the issues, all right, are you going to go with a cloud service provider that moves they get their data centers in Canada? Well, maybe that's okay. But what if they're in Uzbekistan? We started working with one of the large universities here in California. It was a cloud service delivery aspect. The data center was in Utah. The fact that the union actually got up in arms that we were, not we, but the school was thinking of shipping jobs outside of the state. So there's, you know, where is that data going to reside? Data ingest, the volumes, data transport, data migration, data persistence. If you've heard recently, you know, the EU has now got guidelines to say if you don't want to be found on Google and you want your data to go away, your data searches and all that, companies like Google and Microsoft are bound to have to get rid of that. Well, you know, data forensics and, you know, how you get rid of the data is as much of a challenge, I think, in terms of, so I guess what I would contend is you could build not only just the whole course, but, you know, potentially even a track around what are the data management aspects of cloud computing. Peak Cloud is one of our customers, And really the takeaway from this, they're a cloud service provider. We provide the storage infrastructure for their operations. They sell cloud services and hosting services to companies. But the point was that they're built on VMware, Netapp, and Cisco. And I think one thing I'd convey to you is that if you and your curriculum are touching on the networking, virtualization, and storage, those are the three main legs to the stool. If your students can leave with certifications in these areas or from these vendors, they're going to be very marketable. If they can talk to a hiring manager and talk intelligently about how these technologies support and play together, I guess going back to my puck analogy, this is where we see the market going. We partner with Cisco, we partner with VMware. I know that the VMware folks, we're just getting a demo. VMware is owned 80% by EMC, who's our main competitor. I think we're VMware's #1 partner in the world. So, sometimes technology makes for strange bedfellows, but if you're covering with your students networking, virtualization, and storage, you're putting them in a good place in terms of the skill sets that they're going to need. So, I want to switch pages and switch orientation. So that's basically, I guess, our argument and my argument to why you all really need to be looking at cloud computing. It's happening. It's a skill set that your students are going to need. Now, if you buy that, you say, okay, well, what can you help me? What can you provide to help me teach it in my classes? So Netapp, like most of the major technology vendors, we have a formal academic alliance program. We work with colleges and universities to provide them access to be able to teach around storage and data management. We provide a variety of curriculum resources that can run the gamut from, if you just wanted to touch on storage, you've got a 16-week semester and you wanted to give your students 2 hours worth of storage, we've got 3 web-based classes that will introduce them to SAN, NAS, and some basic technology, and you can very easily weave a couple hours into your semester without blowing up your syllabus, and it's pretty easy. Instead of giving them a case study, you have them take these web-based classes. If your school has a bit more of an orientation around hands-on and you want students to have a bit more of a technical challenge, we have vSIMs, virtual simulators of our data on tap software. I can provide you the vSIMs, the licensing, the download, the install. You can set it up and basically create a sandbox for your students to play with. Now, what we would recommend is I can provide you a 4 or 5 hour web-based class that you can use as a prereq so that the students get an introduction to the navigation, the look and feel, and the features and functions. But you can very easily get onto a hands-on. The NCSA certification is what I'm going to drill on next, and that's really what we'll be showing you today. I did provide, hopefully if all of you got, these are just some examples of the kinds of materials that we can provide to you. They run from analyst studies on, all right, what's the importance of data control and hybrid IT? That's from IDC. If you wanted to provide your students a hybrid cloud, dummies or whatever, we can ship you examples of that. I know here what I wanted to show you, the slide share. If you go to these, and I'll make these slides available to anybody that's interested, you can go and find presentations so that if you were lecturing in your class and you wanted to look for some industry information that you wanted to easily pull in, we can provide that. We've got case studies, customer videos. Netapp actually has a YouTube channel that I've got. I've got one school, I didn't even know we had this. We have a guy imitating Eminem doing a rap on deduplication, and it's a little different, but it's 4 minutes, and he says the students love it. So if you're looking for a rap video on deduplication, we can provide you that. So really, I guess, depending on what your particular course or what your interest is, we could give you a couple of web-based classes to give your students an introductory level understanding. We can provide you more in-depth technical information, or we can provide a full track of study. I know the theme for the conference this week, these couple of days, is around certification. Netapp has had certifications for probably 10, 12 years at this point in time. But in April of 2013, we put together an entry-level certification, the NCSA, the Netapp Certified Storage Associate. It's the first tier. If you would think of our certification as kind of as a ladder, the first step in the tier. It was specifically, the previous entry-level certification in its curriculum and in the exam sort of assumed that you probably had 2-3 years experience as a network or systems, database, some kind of field experience. And so for a student to just take the curriculum, walk in and take the exam, the likelihood of them passing was pretty limited. So this course was specifically designed for college students. We designed it in such a way that it's, I think, more easily deliverable as well. So to break it out, the NCSA certification, you could think of it as 4 buckets. There are 5 web-based classes. These are pretty much vendor-neutral technology fundamentals. So this introduces the students to storage, virtualization, data networks, cloud computing, and flash fundamentals. This is maybe 3 or 4 hours worth of content. They're web-based. We set the students up. The students actually set themselves up with a Netapp learning account. They go in and take these courses whenever they want. The next bucket is really, this is a certification that the student knows how to understand and manage a Netapp environment. So the next set of courses are a bit more technically in-depth, and this is sort of the, I guess, the cornerstone of the certification. So you get introduced to Netapp products, data on tap. We have a couple of versions. The company is certainly moving from this 7 mode to a clustered environment, but this will provide the students an in-depth exposure to the Netapp products and solutions. The third bucket, and this is what we're going to demo for you in a couple minutes, is a set of 2 labs. This is called our Basic Netapp Configuration and Administration. This was an actual live class that we used to deliver and sell. Honestly, basically what we did is we stole the labs out of that course and plugged them in as part of this NCSA. I think the importance to them, I work with a faculty advisory board. When we initially designed the curriculum, it didn't have any of the hands-on lab on. And I presented it to the board, and I remember one of them pushed back saying, you know, are you trying to certify that the students have completed a track of study, or are you trying to certify that they can do something? Well, you know, we want to certify that they can do something. We've got to build in this hands-on. And I'll tell you that the feedback, you know, to our design goal, I've heard from a number of students is, I didn't know much about storage to start off with, but I felt if you dropped me into a data center, I could go in and at least do the basic functions. Boeing Aircraft is not going to let a student who's got this NCSA, you know, run their data, their storage environment. But it's going to allow them to do some basic functions. What we can also provide is we've got a practice exam, we've got a study guide for the students, we've got an FAQ. The students can go back in and review all of the web-based classes. I can tell you the pass rate on the exam is not as high as some of our commercial certifications. And we had a bit of a debate over the summer. Did we want to dumb it down? Is not the right word, but you know, do we want to make the test maybe a little bit easier, or should we try to work to prepare the students better? And really to maintain that, I guess, ranking or the prestige of the certification in industry, we didn't lessen it at all. But we've added some additional materials. One thing, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to show it from the way we're set up today, the practice exam has got about 32 questions the student can go through. We offer the same program for returning veterans. We've got a program working with with most of the military branches. And you know, the feedback, I can tell you that returning veterans maybe have a little bit of a higher pass rate. I think maybe some of these Marines, they get a bit more discipline and rigor in terms of studying away. But the feedback is if you do the 28 to 30 hours worth of content and then put another 5 to 10 hours of review in terms of practice exam and these kinds of things, you're in a much better position. Now, one of the things that we provide for the instructors is an instructor's guide. That instructor guide includes all of the source files for all of the web-based courses. So if you wanted your students to go off and take, you know, you're teaching your class on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you want to give them an assignment to take 3 of the web-based classes, you know, Monday or Tuesday, and then come back on Thursday and you want to review some of those materials, we provide you PDFs of all of the web-based classes have, we call them knowledge checks. But you could pull quizzes out of them. You could review the materials. We've got the lab exercise guide. This was new this year. So basically, we want to make it easier for you to pull any of that content into the course. And it's actually, again, I know the way they've got this set up. I'm just hesitant to click on that link. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get back. But it basically would walk you through. Welcome to the Netapp Instructors Guide. Here is such and such. You know, click here to do this, and you'll see there's an attachment things where you can pull down all of the course materials. So that's kind of, I know, a whirlwind. We've got academic materials, teaching resources for introductory to storage concepts overall. Oops. Hey, look at that.
Sorry.
Oh, that's great.
So I clicked on the first one.
I don't know if you can get it up, but obviously, well,
you can use.
Yeah. But so that's the instructor's guide. The NCSA itself, it runs, because the labs and the courses, you know, they're somewhat self-paced. It's about 25 to 30 hours worth of content. If you build in the review materials, you know, it can get you up to 35 to 40. If you then wanted to load in the VSIMs, the virtual simulators, and provide the students additional hands-on experience, you know, well, this is probably a nice segue. I was going to say, some of the schools have integrated it into a 3-credit course. Others have used it to supplement a course. So one of the schools that we work with is Rankin Tech out of St. Louis. 2-year technical school. They're the first school in the U.S. They had their student was the first person to pass the NCSA, and the professor at this school was the first faculty member to pass the NCSA. So we give them kudos. But in this case, the course was a network virtualization. You know, I heard a little earlier that, you know, it's often hard to figure out where do you plug in some of this new material. Getting a new course blessed through the community college system or a faculty senate, you know, whether it's budget or finding resources is a challenge. So I'll bet in 80% of the cases of the schools that we work with, they take the content and integrate it into an existing course. We have a few that will build and develop a dedicated course. This past fall, we worked with Wichita State University, and they launched a Storage Essentials course. And basically what they did is they used the NCSA, was about 80%. All of that content was about 80% of the course, and they built around it. Now at Rankin, as I say, they built it into a virtualization. The vSIMs that we provide to them, they have to be installed and set up in a VM. So the fact that the students are getting exposed to VMware and have a pretty good understanding of virtualization, it dovetailed pretty nicely. And then they basically took the content that you see on the courses that are listed in the NCSA write-up that we provided to you, and basically wove them into the course. They used a practice exam. They actually, all of the students are required to go and sit for the exam. We use Pearson VUE. We provide a voucher to you so that the students can go take the test at Pearson at no charge. Now what they have is the students have to go through and sit for the exam, but if they don't pass, it doesn't impact their grade. But the professor wanted the students to have the experience of going through and sitting for an industry certification. If they pass, it's, you know, frosting on the cake. So Rankin's been, you know, pretty diligent. I think they did it this semester, and, you know, probably a year and a half now working with them. One of the other schools we work with is the Madison Area Technical College. They're up in Madison, Wisconsin. In this case, they didn't have the syllabus that I could pull down, but I got a quote from the professor. And you know, basically, they have an industry advisory board that they work with. Their industry advisory board has looked at their curriculum and said one of the gaps that we see is around storage. They looked at different vendors. I think they went out, I don't know if it was dice.com or just the local newspapers. They basically were looking to see, well, what are employers advertising for, and you know, ended up calling us saying, look, people are looking for Netapp. Do you get a program? So what they've done is probably 10 of their 16 weeks is using the NCSA. They've got 30 students per semester. They complete the 6 labs, the lab activities. They do the basic Netapp and configuration, but in this case, again, it was woven into an existing course. At UC Santa Cruz, at their extension school, they teach a class on storage technology and data centers. So it's specifically focused around data centers. This is sort of an outline of the topics that they cover. But in this case, the faculty member, who happens to be sitting in the back of the room, has offered it to the students as a supplement. So it's like sanctioned extra credit. And correct me if I get it wrong, but basically the students are not required to take the MCSA, but we let them know that, look, if you add this to your resume or you have an opportunity as a student in this class, you're eligible to take this. But they take this on their own time. Is that correct? But, you know, it dovetails, again, very nicely with the data center course that they have. One of the other schools that is used at is Ball State University. In this case, the professor is teaching that the class is actually a disaster recovery, data storage and disaster recovery course. They've taken the NCSA and, again, woven it in. In this case, the professor has actually developed some dummy, I don't want to use the word dummy, but, you know, artificial scenarios that the students have to go in, and it's tied to disaster recovery. He sets the students up in teams of 4 or 5 students per, and they have to put together a solution in terms of a disaster recovery event. Using the software, they have to then present that. The project will be development of a comprehensive strategy. I'll tell you, reading through this gentleman's syllabus, I was thinking, this guy is you know, like a Marine drill sergeant. It was a pretty rigorous course, but you know, they've used this several times. So the breadth of where it can be used. These are just a few of the other schools that we work with. The point here is that some are 4-year schools, some are community colleges. In some cases, we work with the School of Business, another with the IT, with computer science or computer information systems. I think one of the reasons that we've been able to work with the breadth of schools is that, you know, we're somewhat flexible. If you just want to use some of the web-based training and introduce the students to storage, we can do that. If you want to provide the VSIMs and provide some more hands-on, great. If you want to do a much more dedicated or a focused track of study, you know, we can do that as well. So, and that was a whirlwind overview of the program. I know we're probably a little early for the next session, but are all of you planning to stay for the hands-on, the live demo? Yeah. All right. All right. So why don't we take like a 5-minute break? Do we have to do any setup, Patrick, at all? Are we going to load one thing?
I do want to test the system's connectivity before we...
all right. We want to do one test, but before we do that, are there any questions? Does that make sense? Do you buy the sturdy, great ideas? Shit, I'm going to go home and I'm going to be teaching cloud computing next Tuesday. Anybody? No?
How much?
How much? You know, I should have started that off right off the bat. All of these materials are provided at no charge. So there's no expense. I can tell you there's a direct correlation in terms of time and effort. So the schools that we've engaged with that seem more successful, like the gentleman at Rankin, who actually went through and did the curriculum and took the test himself, he's much more engaged and able to use it. So there's a little bit of, you know, time and effort. That NCSA curriculum, to market it to key students potentially, we would sell that to customers for about $1,900. So it's, you know, the commercial value of that certification is a couple $1,000 plus the voucher. And so, you know, if you get a class of 20 students, you know, you're walking away with 20, 30, 40 grand worth of value, hopefully, that the students at the school otherwise might not be able to provide. So, how about before we kick off, any questions?
Is there a constant software?
No. So in terms of, you know, the VSIMs, the virtual simulators, you know, they're downloadable and installable. You do that. There's no charge for that. In terms of, you'll see what we're going to show you with the NCSA is we provide through Netapp University these self-paced labs. Those labs are delivered to your students. They can log in pretty much around the world, 7 by 24. The one stipulation I should say is that the labs that are provided as part of the NCSA. Oh, let me skip here. There are provisions to each student. Each of the labs is about 2.5 to 3 hours. So there's 6 hours of labs. When student Johnny Jones logs in and kicks off this first lab, they have 3 hours, they have 24 hours in which to complete that 3 hours of work. When they log into the second environment, they have 3 hours, they have 24 hours to complete that 3 hours of work as well. At this point, we aren't able to provision the lab to say, you know, on Labor Day, we can give Johnny access to the labs and then keep it open the whole semester. So the labs, the one constraint is there's no charge for them, but the student has to, you know, complete the work in a particularly, now, we don't tell the students, but there's a little flexibility in the back end. You know, if they go away and it's 26 hours, they're not going to get logged out, but we basically, you know, can't leave a lab open for them for the semester. And I think it's, so there's...
So those labs are different than the VSIM?
They are.
The labs are the real McCoy.
Well, the labs are, but you know, the VSIM, the labs that you're going to see are really built on some of the VSIMs. So you can take the lab exercise guides that you're going to see, and if you set the VSIM up, this is why I mentioned some of the schools, what they'll do is, all right, I've got 6 hours that Johnny can access these. I've got the VSIM set up in a room like this. He or she can come in at their own time and play around with it, do the lab exercises, and sort of extend the hands-on capability of it. So they're different but very similar. Yes, Patrick?
Just to explain the VSIM a little bit, the VSIM is not a simulation of data on tap. The VSIM is a virtual machine that is running data on tap. What we are simulating is the underlying hardware. So we're simulating disk drives by actually creating partitions on a disk. But the data on tap that's running in the VSIM, that is data on tap. So all of the things that the students are doing in that VSIM is running the same code that they will be running in the real world on hardware. It's exactly the same. The thing being simulated is the underlying hardware.
Great distinction. And we use the VSIMs internally for performance testing, and so, you know, we basically get the same VSIMs that our engineers. Yes, sir.
So you're talking to Rich earlier. Does that mean that there is conceptual concepts of getting behind that in the future?
Well, you know, I'll be candid. You know, there's a bit of a trade-off. You know, one of the things I've heard from some schools is that the thing that they like most about our program is the VSIMs with no charge, and that they're very easily, you know, set up, and you don't need any hardware or special technical environment. You know, to be candid, the environment through Netapp and the expertise that they have from working with VMware and Cisco and EMC, and how they distribute that and support that is interesting and attractive. So, you know, Rich and I have known each other for a few years. We chat all the time. We'll have to see. I mean, there's nothing official, but you know, it is a concept. But you know, I guess it's a different approach. You know, I've heard some schools that would prefer the VSIMs, and you know, I don't know. Yes, sir.
Mark, what are you seeing in terms of the mix of selling storage devices versus storage services for Netapp? You still sell iron, right?
Well, you know, that's a great question. Now, there's always a debate, or it has been over the last couple of years. You know, should Netapp be a cloud service provider? Should we be selling, you know, different kinds of cloud storage services? So let me ask. This is a right. Well, probably a lot of California folks. Who made the money in the gold rush in the 1800s? The merchants, Levi Strauss, the railroads, and the guys who sold the shovels. It wasn't the gold miners. So Netapp, we're taking that prospecting approach. You know, we're going to provide the infrastructure for. So our customers are like Verizon and Rackspace. We're the only provider that provides private storage to Amazon, to Microsoft Azure. IBM's Global Services, we're the one storage provider to them when they deliver their services. So we do sell that kit, you know, the hardware. I don't think that I'm pretty sure based on everything I've read from our management team, you will not see Netapp selling storage services or cloud-based services. But we're providing the infrastructure to our customers who can do that. Yes, sir.
Yeah, going back to your point as far as what Netapp offers as far as the infrastructure for learning versus NetLab. So some of the vendors I tried through the same presentation. I think those are vendors that do not provide their hardware or software free of charge. Basically, they have one entity, one tool for them, and all other tools will go ahead and share them. Then, in the case of our Academic Alliance resources, there are tools. For example, when I teach my course of Business Sciences Extension, on the first day of school, we go ahead and give them their credential, and in fact, Mark provides all of the students with their login name, address, and the link. They log in and they get results to the resources free of charge. So it's a two different systems, and this is just
I'll tell you, one thing I wasn't great, with I heard that, there's some of the consortium of schools where you would have one setup, say, with the NetLab devices, and then multiple schools logged in. So, there's trade-offs and benefits with that. Got to look at those. Look, I know this is dangerous with any class. You say, okay, take a 5-minute break, everyone disappears in the hallway, and you lose half the class or whatever. But again, let's take a 5-minute break. We're verifying the setup on one of the on each of the things, and then we're going to kick off with the hands-on stuff right away.
Lab information that you're going to be just up. There's 2 pages. Sorry, 2 pages for each. The lab information. What we are going to be doing is connecting to the vSIMs, and you guys get to play around with it a little bit. You will find out that the instructions that we have are pretty detailed. They're if you just follow through, what we're going to do is connect to the systems that are down in Sunnyvale right now, and go through some of the basic steps. We'll adjust the time zone, check the date and time, things like that. Because guess what? System administrators do this sort of thing. I recently have found some significant issues that I have with students who are using MacBooks with regard to time. It's a crazy little thing, but we figured out what the issue was and resolved it. But guess what? We're going to be doing this exercise in all of our classes now to have everybody set the date and time correctly so that you don't have a time skew issue. Anybody who's dealing with Kerberos, which is many people out there in the real world, knows that the default allowable time skew is 5 minutes. And if one machine and the other machine are outside of that 5-minute window, guess what? Kerberos picks up his football and goes home. He says, I'm not going to play with you. We're not going to do anything here. And so these are steps that we're going to be doing that are really, really useful in the real world, even though they are very basic in terms of complexity. If you go through the first 3 modules that are in this book, which, it shouldn't take very long to get through them, and you would like to play around with them, let's play. We can have some fun because this is data on tap. So if you want to create a machine, you want to create some volumes, change the size of the volumes. Guess what? We do that in the real world. And the types of things that you do in the real world, this is a great opportunity for us to play. So what we're going to do is start out on page 1 of our book, and let's see, I suppose I ought to get that thumb drive and put it on here, wherever it was. Thank you. I'm going to put that on my machine, and then I'm going to have Deb come over and sit and run it. I'll let you do that and pull that up. And what we'll do is I'll sort of walk through the steps with you as you go along. You guys are going to be doing it on your machines. We're going to be doing it on the screen here as well. All right. Exercise 1, getting started. This is what's in your book. And so we're going to look at the environment the kit that we have. And what we're going to be doing in this first module is checking connectivity, first of all. And that was a major concern that I had because many universities, many colleges do have good firewalls. They need it because students are, I know what that's like. And so, you know, we need to make sure that we're able to get through, but Al and I just checked that, and by golly, it works just fine. So they did a good job here at CCSF. The diagram, what we're doing is we're going to be accessing a Windows 2012 server here, and within this, we have a two-machine cluster. Now, we haven't talked a whole lot about clustering, but this is something that's important for the future of Netapp. And a lot of people I know, as I've been teaching around the world, this is what I do. I'm senior technical instructor for Netapp University. I fly around the world teaching classes. And a lot of people have said, well, I've been using 7 mode for a lot of years, and I've learned 7 mode, but what's this clustering that you're talking about? And does that mean that all of my knowledge gets thrown away? The answer is no. You do not lose any of your 7-mode knowledge when you go to cluster data on time. Because inside of each of these nodes, we have 7-mode running as a software module, although you won't see it called that the code is running on every one of these nodes. And so all the things that you learned about 7-mode, it's still there. And it's still valuable. So we have value as we go forward into the next generations of Netapp products. The students that are learning the 7-mode, that's great stuff. That is a great foundation and makes it easy to slide into cluster. But with clustering, what we're doing is we're taking multiple systems. This is history repeating itself. Because a long, long time ago, I know most of you guys are young whippersnappers, but I'm an old fogey. I used to ride a dinosaur to work. And when I used to ride a dinosaur to work a long, long time ago, disks were big. They were huge. Anybody remember Fuji Eagle disk drives?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I do.
Don't admit it.
I was just going to say, I shouldn't admit it.
That was state-of-the-art a long, long time ago. 142 pounds. That's one disk. 8U rack-mounted. You know, that's one disk drive. But it made up for the size with that sheer massive capacity. The capacity of these things was enormous. They would hold 256 megabytes of data.
Wow.
Yes, I said megabytes. That was the state-of-the-art way back when. And so somebody came up with a bright idea. Hey, what would happen if we took 4 of these bad boys, put them in a rack, and we wrote an operating system or a file system that would write to these in a round-robin method? Then we'd write to disk number 1, then disk number 2, then 3, then 4, then 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. That would give us an entire gigabyte of storage. We would never have to buy storage again the rest of our lives. We can run our business for the rest of our lives on an entire gigabyte. That was the state of the art back then. And so they did it. They set this up, and they checked it, and it was writing to disk 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. Yes, it was working good. Everybody was doing their happy dance in the data center. Everything was going good, and then one of the disks broke. Oops. What happened to the data? It was all gone. When you lost any one disk, you would lose all of your data. And everybody kind of went, uh-oh, didn't see that coming. And that was the situation that prompted the creation of RAID way back when, a redundant array of inexpensive disks. Well, you know, now they call them independent disks, but back in the early days, the I stood for inexpensive because that was the gating issue on getting it, on putting this whole thing together. And so, you know, they tried mirroring. Yes, that worked good, but that's awful expensive because these Fuji Eagle disk drives cost like $50,000 each. And that was in old-time dollars where dollars were worth something. And so, you know, that didn't work. And so RAID 4 was, well, RAID 3 was done at bit level, RAID 4 at byte level, RAID 5 then striped to the parity across all the disks. And you've seen the evolution of RAID. But that was the thing that prompted it. So what does that have to do with clustering? History is repeating itself. In 2002, there was a really smart guy up at Carnegie Mellon University by the name of Mike Kazar, who is, you know, looking at these network appliance filers, these boxes here. I went, yeah, those are pretty cool, but they've got some limitations. There's limitations on your networking capabilities. There's limitations on the number of disks you can have. There's limitations on all these different things. what would happen if you took a whole bunch of these filers and hook them all together? Isn't that what they just said about disks when they invented a redundant array of independent disks or inexpensive disks? Yeah, same question Mike asked. What would happen if I took 10 or 20 of these filers and wrote to them in parallel? That would be cool. That would blow past all of the limitations of a single box. And so he started a company that in 2002 called Spinnaker Networks in Pittsburgh. And they went to work, and the idea was to use the network appliance filers as the storage, the basis. And then they were going to have a blade server handle the networking. They were going to have a Unix box handle the management, and so on. And when he put together teams of people to write the code, but then they decided to check the code and see if it would interoperate correctly or not. And they were blown away at what happened. Because the platform they used to check interoperability was the network appliance filers. Because back then it was network appliance. We weren't Netapp yet back then. We were network appliance. They put the code on the filers and found out that, whoa, this thing not only handles the disk stuff, but it also handled the networking, and it handled the management, and had CPU left over. They went, whoa, that's amazing. We don't need a blade server. We don't need a Unix box. We can do everything on the filers. This is great. And one of the founders of Netapp was looking over my shoulder at the time, and he went, you're right. That is great. We'll buy you. And we did. We bought them. In 2004, Network Appliance bought, by that time we were turning into Netapp, but we bought Spinnaker Networks. And this is the product that they started out with, and we have been developing it ever since. We released our first Netapp branded cluster in 2006, which was Data ONTAP GX 10.0.0, and it has evolved since then and continues to evolve and will continue to evolve into the future. But inside of each one of these boxes, there is code for that Unix box. There's code for the filer, that's the 7G code, or 7 mode code, and there's code for that blade server. It's all in here. But now I can have this cluster with up to 24 nodes all linked together, which gives us huge capacity, huge performance capability, huge flexibility. And so when we talk about cloud computing, as Mark just did, you know, when push comes to shove, when I update my resume, it gets saved on a platter somewhere. I send it into the cloud. Where's it going to land? On a platter, on a disk that's managed by and owned by a Netapp box. That's where the jobs are going to be, because data is not going away. Data is getting bigger, and that means storage has to get bigger. This is a really, really good time to be in this industry and in this, in this company. You know, we're really well positioned to be the provider for the cloud, regardless of whose label is on the cloud. But what are they going to need to run it? They're going to need people who understand Data ONTAP. That's why we're here. And that's why your students will benefit from what we're talking about. All right, so we have a 2-node cluster for you in your lab kit, and there are going to be network connection. We're not going to worry about that today. What we're going to be doing, though, is connecting to the cluster through a cluster management interface, and then we're going to be doing things that will impact the whole cluster. For example, when I update the date and time, it gets updated on everybody in the cluster. Nice, this is cool. Now, I could adjust a particular node if I want to. All right, what are we going to do? We're going to be following the steps here to connect to our Windows 8 environment, where there is a black box here that says desktop. That's where we're going. So what I need everybody to do is open up a browser on your system, and you're going to be connecting to the IP address, which is, I always forget that, 216.240.23.79, I believe, is the IP address that you'll be putting in at the top. And then you're going to be using that handy-dandy sheet of paper that we gave you with the kit name on the top. There we go. So we've got a kit name here. So we're connecting to this IP address, and it will tell you, log in. Who am I going to log in as? VE-guest something, whatever is on your piece of paper. This is going to give everybody a unique lab environment. So what you do will not mess up what you do, and vice versa. So each of you will have a completely unique environment. So if you want to get creative, great, welcome, get creative. So you're going to log in as VE-guest. Today's password is River37, RIVER37, it's right there. And that will open up the next window where it's going to say, do you want to open up a terminal session? Yes, that's what we want, but we need to put in an IP address for the terminal session. That's the purple number on page 2. This big purple number, 10.251.89. something. You enter that under your terminal session and click connect. Now it may take a minute because what we're doing is as needed, we may be adding software to the system for this to work. Okay?
Would you plug in an IP address where you are?
Okay, no, not there. We are, okay, here's where we put in the IP address. You have a sheet here. Okay, 216.240. 23.79. 240.
Yeah.
Okay. I only use Internet Explorer. I know I actually use a Mac myself. I don't like any Mac. I try it first because this was written for Internet Explorer.
Folks are getting blocked. I know they tested it before.
Oh, do you have one? I know I do. There it is. Okay, there it is. That's the IP. Okay.
Now, see, those folks are getting blocked. Are we able to get in?
I'm waiting for the.
Okay, so that's okay. Just continue to it.
Oh, it is. Okay.
There we go. This is the VE-guest.
Do I need to run Juniper setup client installer?
Yes.
Yes, that is the software that we are putting on the machine to run it.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Chrome doesn't seem to like it here. I think they've got
IP, I guess, is the easier one to access.
Yeah, Internet Explorer is the one that I normally use. But I know it was written for Explorer, so it seems to work best with Explorer. I don't know why. By the way, this is the toughest exercise in any class that I teach. Anywhere in the world is connecting the first time. That is by far the most difficult. After that, everything works great. So this is completely normal. There's always some systems that the students bring in that don't work. Here, looks like we're wrestling with different browsers. That's all right. We'll get through it. We will make it work. It probably would be a good idea going forward. It is consistent. I would do screenshots from Internet Explorer and recommend people use it because that's what it was written for. Okay, it probably in the
Before I leave, I'll try and capture it.
okay, great, super.
Yeah, good.
Great. Down here under terminal sessions, that's where you put the big purple IP on the second page. Yep, the big purple one. There it is, 10.251.
That's where I was.
Is it waiting? Usually it's good. Yeah, as long as something is still moving, usually it's good.
I'm getting the.
Woohoo! Something happening is good.
Yeah.
We are kicking you out of class. Wait a minute, no. That's not good. Okay. Blocked by Java security. Oh, I hate it when they do that. Okay. What we have to do then is go into the settings for Java and change the security to media. This is
Just one desktop? Or?
Yep. It's an it's an idiosyncrasy of Microsoft. They used to default Java security settings to media. They changed it to very high as the default.
Can you sit somewhere else?
It might work if you try it on a different system. It depends on what the settings are on that. That's all right. What we will do, though, is something that I was talking about. Okay, that's always a good thing. And the other thing is that we are going to document exactly how to just talking to Dad about that a couple minutes ago to make sure that we add those steps. So we're getting there. Okay, you know what? You're a step ahead of me because I got a Dropbox account and I haven't used it yet. I get these reminders. Yes, go ahead and run. We're going to run that. Again, this is not anything that you're going to need to do anything with, but it is the underlying software that the system is running on. So this is good. This is what we built the simulator. What we're doing is drilling a hole through it so that you can get to it. And we're using the software to do it. Because we can't leave our systems available out there for the whole white world because they'll get corrupted. The internet's a very hostile place. So we have
different companies.
Don't worry about it. All we do is we have a big old firewall in front of our lab systems, and Juniper opens up that door so that you can get it. Okay, and click here to continue. Yes, of course we're going to continue. That's what we're here for. All right. Okay. Then let's click on the windows here. We're going to go to control panel. And we're going to set Java. We're going to go to security. So where are we connected to? We don't have medium.
UTC University.
Okay. So doing that one more. I had that one.
Some of the other folks are all like through, so I'm just wondering.
Well, let's try it on that machine just for the fun of it. See whether or not we can get activity.
Were you able to get in? I changed to Internet Explorer. Yeah.
You have a relationship with the Jennifer other than?
Vice President at University hire up one of the systems and go through those steps. You are welcome to do that. That will work. And that way we'll have you doing it up here. Yeah, so we're going to have Deb doing the lab up here on the screen. So if you are stuck, take a look and see what she's doing. And again, ask questions. Please don't sit there stuck. Ask us questions. None of us was born knowing this stuff. Every one of us had to learn it at some point.
So
Except Deb. Deb was born knowing it.
No,
the rest of us all had to learn it.
How do I actually don't know how to do what they just did to get into this.
Okay.
Go to this portal.
Let's open up
Internet Explorer.
Internet Explorer.
The 64?
Should work.
Okay. There's 64 and then there's
Okay.
regular.
And then up here, I put in the 216.240.23.79. Return. And continue. Hopefully this is one of those good systems.
Yeah.
VE-guest. We'll find out. No, I mean, that's what we're here for. Hey, that's the same as my password. ... It's amazing how many people use that same password.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. And yes, we are going to install Juniper.
So Al, when students log into this environment, do they have to go through the similar launch like this for that first setup?
No, in a regular student environment, what happens is they actually go through our self-paced lab portal, and so they'll actually provision their kits on the fly on them, and they'll be coming in through actually an HTML5 gateway on it. So as long as your browser is HTML5 compliant, you won't have to do a Java design. Because we have issues with the Java versions of Java working with Juniper clients, so that's why we moved to an HTML5 gateway.
Okay, and then terminal sessions, the purple IP. I try to make that distinctive in the handouts, because otherwise people are always putting in the wrong IP address here and they get totally lost.
First one.
Yeah.
Now I know how to do this.
I don't normally do this either. You know, I've got a MacBook, and so it's quite different.
What we're going through right now is the process that goes through for an IoT, not for the self-paced.
Right.
The self-paced is 2 clicks. You get to that.
You're making me jealous.
Yeah. In the book, there's this blue gateway. There's like a gateway with a little blue door, and you click on that, and you're in.
Yes, we want to run that puppy. And good. I know. That's okay. I mean, we're doing what we came to do.
Yeah.
The time is off less than 5 minutes. Is that case less than 5 minutes? Yes. Correct. What we recommend in the real world when I'm dealing with technology companies is that they use a network high protocol servers, and they have the Windows box sync up and the units from the cluster all sync up to the same NTP server that, depending on the standards, can make it in a second, which is really nice.
Yeah. I didn't get the
There we go. Yeah, let's try run again.
Uh-oh.
That's okay, run a loop. let it complete before you click here. Let it finish what it's doing here. I don't think it was done with a security scan.
So I guess it's open office a little bit.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Right.
See, it got into here, and then I pressed
Let it
stop.
keep going. Because it'll do a second one.
So then,
Hang on, it'll close by itself.
oh, okay.
You still got the hourglass. Oh, sure, make a liar out of me.
So it's not supposed to close. So it did this a moment
Okay.
ago, and when it
Yeah.
said completed close, I clicked close. Should I?
Give it a second.
Okay, let's wait and see.
Because I'm still getting flickering on
Yeah, I
the
see it.
mouse that makes me suspect it's
Microsoft
doing
is
something.
famous for saying something is all completed before it really is,
Yeah.
because they don't want you to.
Okay, let's try it now. I think we've given it enough time.
Let's see if it gives me an hourglass anyway.
And then click here to continue. Come on, hopefully we won't go into a loop.
If we go into it, I'll go back to showing the
Yeah.
the screen, and maybe I'll pick up.
You could also split it by doing a partial screen.
Right.
Yeah, do windows and put them one next to another.
If this goes into a loop,
Well, we won't worry about it. We'll simply display the guide.
right.
Singing and dancing, it's what I do.
It was great. I didn't know that. Okay,
Okay.
so I'm going to go back to the guide because it's giving me a
Yep.
list. I think it was.
If you close this, it'll still be there behind.
Thank you.
Yep, there we go.
Everyone is probably beyond.
Oh, looks good. Very good.
Now, once you do that, the timestamp, now that seems an administrative activity. What does that then enable you to do next? Let me ask you.
That is basically the ounce of prevention that's better than a pound of cure. By
Yes.
setting the time zone correctly up front, you avoid a whole lot of problems, particularly with SMB. When you're using SIF's protocol, it is really sensitive to time zone issues. You will, if the time zone is not set correctly, you will end up getting SMB errors downstream somewhere, and it's impossible to predict when they'll show up. So you do the time zone setting up front, and hopefully connect to a network time protocol server, and it's a problem then that will not ever show up in the real world, which is what I like. I like avoiding problems better than solving problems.
Mm-hmm. So how many people have set their times, have done that part? Awesome, right?
The side's looking good. I don't know about this side over here.
I'm not quite sure why. Just go ahead and go forward, but if it calls for the name, just put the IP address, which is what I'm holding with the
Well, this is your checkpoint.
Yeah, this is, we're going to call them design together, but you can do that, because that's probably somewhere in the world, that's you know, somewhere. So, you know, any hand signals, I always avoid the gesture, you know, because you never know what you're doing. Yeah.
You guys messed up with that.
Oh, come on now, don't leave her. By the way, is there anybody here from Cabrillo College? Woohoo! My alma mater. I got my associate's degree from there. I got my bachelor's degree then from the University of San Francisco, my MBA from Regis University in Denver. But I also got kicked out of some colleges. I got kicked out of San Jose State. Anybody here from San Jose State? Good. I got kicked out of De Anza College. Anybody? I got kicked out of Foothill College. Anybody? I was not a good student when I was young. It took me a little while to grow up, which just should give you hope, you know, that when you have hopeless students, they might eventually grow up, but it may take them another 20 years.
Ron, you're up next.
I mean, I majored in beer and women when I was in college, and that did not
Bill,
do much for graduating.
Anything by name. Either, yeah, you can't repeat all by name.
I saw that DNS issue this morning. Just go ahead, go forward with it, use the IP to bypass